This is Volume 1 of the Rothbard-Rockwell Report, from April 1990. Why the report? 1989 was the exciting, wondrous year when the century of socialism-communism shifted with dazzling speed toward a 21st century of freedom. But at this glorious moment, when libertarian ideas have exerted their greatest influence in 100 years, what has been happening to libertarian activism and organizations? Have they expanded proportionately, ready to take advantage of this great breakthrough? Hell no. Libertarian institutions have been imploding, collapsing, disappearing. The Libertarian Party is in parlous shape, and there are few periodicals available for libertarians to analyze these world events, or to consider what to do next. In 1989 alone, while communism was disintegrating, 3 libertarian magazines disappeared. A grievous loss was Mike Holmes' monthly, American Libertarian, which provided indispensable news of the movement as well as fearless commentary and discussions of strategy. And while the death of publication Individual Liberty was not nearly as calamitous, it did provide an outlet for independent news and commentary. Among the survivors, LP News is swill, and boring swill at that. And Liberty has become a bi-monthly homeless shelter for nihilo-libertarian nobodies. Communism has crumpled, and libertarian ideas are spreading, yet the movement is in dire straits, floundering, played out, getting nowhere. Why? What's wrong with the movement? What's wrong with the party? We have plenty of ideas on these subjects, but we have found that there is no place to publish them. We found that other libertarian publications are too timid, too disapproving, too worried about hostility from powerful sectors of the movement to publish them. And so we have decided to fill the gap ourselves and to launch our own publication. Anyone who knows the writings of the two of us knows that we have plenty of things to say on a wide variety of topics of great interest to libertarians, and furthermore that we pull no punches. We want to tell the truth at long last. Note bene, the two of us are hardcore libertarians, but we have also long been paleos, men devoted to bourgeois values and culture, and staunch opponents of the nihilist counterculture. Too long has libertarianism been scorned because it has been connected in the lifestyle and culture of most movement activists, with an adolescent hippie-druggy culture that scorns people of competence who earn a regular paycheck, much less who have met a payroll, or have any visible means of support. So we will be publishing from time to time the social conservatism of the old curmudgeon, and the cultural conservatism of Mr. First Nighter. 2 Murray N. Rothbard bylines from the old libertarian forum, much reviled by the mass of nihilo-libertarians. We are also privileged to have a gossip columnist, Sarah Barton, who knows where the bodies are buried and wants to tell what she knows. All those seething with discontent at injustice or iniquity in the movement are invited to send their items to Miss Barton. Most of the Triple R will be written by the two of us and Miss Barton, though from time to time others will be invited to contribute. But we are not open to all comers. While the clash of ideas has value in the broad culture, we are frankly not interested in devoting our limited resources to publishing and promoting error. There is enough of that in the libertarian movement. Remember that your subscription is for 12 issues rather than 1 year. You may, depending on events, get those 12 issues in 11 months or 14. We hope that you like our newsletter, but even if you don't, you can't afford not to read us. Already, this publication is the talk of the movement. It will continue to be. Signed, Murray N. Rothbard and Lou Rockwell Jr. Now for the gossip column. The Ear. The Donald-Ivana Trump split has been a boon to all my sisters in the gossip business, but there's an interesting libertarian angle to this story. Last New Year's Eve, Donald brought his mistress, Marla Maples, to a party at libertarian billionaire David Koch's Aspen, Colorado mansion. All went well until Ivana telephoned and demanded to know if her husband was there with his girlfriend. David got nervous and broke into one of his donkey laughs, reported the New York Post. But Ivana thought he was laughing at her. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. People were laughing at her. Did David Koch cause the Trump divorce? Well, not quite. But now no one can say that David, exiled by Brother Charles to a life of idle richness, never accomplished anything. Marla Bottomiller, appointed with much fanfare as the new national field coordinator of the Libertarian Party, is not exactly beginning by making friends and influencing people, one of her main tasks. On a tour of the southern states, Marla came to Jackson, Mississippi. Expecting for some reason to be put up at the home of the local Libertarian Party honcho, she was told that said honcho's home was not available. At this point, Marla called Jack Criss, a local radio talk show host who has been sympathetic to libertarianism. Although she has never met Jack, she asked him to put her up for the night. On being refused, she kept calling, phoning the poor guy no less than 7 times. Although formerly sympathetic to the Libertarian Party, Jack now tells me he no longer feels the same way. Marla, sit down here right next to me, and let me talk to you, woman to woman. Are there no motels? Doesn't the LP give you an expense account? Outside the LP, people do not go for the standard libertarian attitude of su casa es mi casa. In the real world, sweetie, they'll call you a moocher, a deadbeat, and an annoying pest. And it's a dangerous world out there. You may end up finding Mr. Goodbar. The 2 real-world potential LP presidential candidates have taken a look at the party's declining fortunes and bailed out. When asked recently if he were running, Ron Paul told the Houston Post, "I hope I have enough sense not to do that again." Walter Williams, who had said he might be interested if all fundraising and ballot access were taken care of, a laughable proviso given the LP, was given a 2-hour Dutch Uncle talk by Edward Crane III of the Cato Institute, one of the anti-LP pioneers. Walter is now telling friends that there is no way he will run. That leaves Andre Maru, ex-VP candidate, ex-engineer, ex-realtor, and ex-life insurance salesman, as the one and only. Maru may have failed in the real world, but his VP campaign account ended with a $46,000 surplus. and the 51 to 92 ballot access PAC he formed with Michael Emmerling, bankrupt and loan defaulter, has raised almost $100,000, while spending little on ballot access. Recently, Andre has been verbally abusing his wife in public. Eileen is a great gal who deserves better, but the situation showcases Andre. LPers will now have to figure out not only whether Andre's IQ is 51 or 92, but whether he or Michael is the greater cad. Note: the LP's own ballot access committee shut down after Chairman Steve Givet sent the most ill-advised fundraising letter in the history of the movement. Steve, it's not smart to tell donors that their money has been all pissed away, but you promise to be continent in the future. The Ear's fearless prediction: the 1992 campaign will make the 1984 Bergland debacle look good. Signed, Sarah Barton. Farewell Speeches to the Alabama LP by Murray Rothbard. The Alabama Libertarian Party held a large-scale convention in Birmingham on February 10th, featuring a luncheon address by Lew Rockwell on what's wrong with the Libertarian Party, and a talk soon after by myself on the Libertarian movement in the 90s, capped by an evening banquet talk by Bob Poole on privatizing airports. Approximately 100 people attended, a record for the Alabama LP, obviously attracted by the program. The gathering also included many leaders of the neighboring Georgia Party. Indeed, the Alabama Party also used the occasion to hold a meeting of southeastern state chairs. Lew Rockwell was invited because of his striking article on the case for Paleo-Libertarianism, published in Liberty on January. By far the most controversial article that Liberty has ever published. Also, Rockwell's announced resignation from the LP had been mentioned, albeit in incredibly garbled form, in the December LP news. My own similar stance, I thought, had been made clear, if not by my seconding talk for Matt Monroe at the National Convention at Philadelphia, then at least by my fiery denunciation of the LP in The Revenge of the Luftmannchen debacle at Philadelphia, in what unfortunately turned out to be the final issue of American Libertarian, published September. Furthermore, the Alabama LP leadership made clear their solid agreement with Rockwell's article, their disaffection having been registered long ago in refusing to join any LP region, thereby avoiding representation on the National Committee. Worried about what we were going to say, Ron Krickenberger, newly elected NatCom representative from the South, Region 4, requested that he be allowed to make a brief comment after our talks. All in all, this was big stuff, far more significant than a run-of-the-mill state convention. Although allegedly sympathetic to the Rockwell-Rothbard message, the assembled Alabama and Georgia Party stalwarts apparently got a lot more than they had bargained for. For Rockwell decided to get down to cases, to cut beneath the paleo-nihilo generalities, and to tell the assemblage, in concrete detail, what precisely was wrong with the National Libertarian Party. Even though he went out of his way to exempt the assembled Alabama and Georgia Party people from his strictures, The gathering reacted in shock and horror anyway. For Rockwell had named names, pricking the inflated balloons of the dearly beloved leaders who infest the Libertarian Party like the leeches and barnacles that they are. In the question period, Lou was accused at one and the same time of being too general and also too specific, i.e., name-calling. One woman, in tears, accused Lou of destroying her life and her values. In my own talk, I exhorted the assemblage not to react to Lou by shooting the messenger, a time-honored practice of rulers to whom the messenger brings bad news. Not only did the gathering not heed my advice, but I am afraid that very few, if any of them, understood the allusion. When asked by one of the audience why Lou had to disclose his hard-hitting message in this particular forum, I replied that there is virtually nowhere else to make these disclosures, certainly not in LP News or Liberty, and alas, no longer in American Libertarian. Now, of course, there is the Triple R. We are dealing here not only in the Libertarian Party as a whole, but, sad to relate, even in the dissident state parties, not with a group of rational people, but with virtually a religious cult. It was particularly disheartening to those of us associated with American Libertarian that the only people who seemed to be affected by our detailed revelation of chicanery in the LP were the guilty parties themselves, who squeaked to the high heavens and tried their best to have our critical articles suppressed. The other folks, the ones being fleeced, the ones that we were trying to reach with our message, either expressed no interest whatever, or denounced us as negative, divisive, etc. The woman who accused Lou of destroying her life and values was only an extreme version of the general reaction. Why is Rockwell imposing such a downer on us when we came here to be inspired? The downer, unfortunately, is the messenger conveying the truth. Indeed, the reaction of LPers to the news and messages delivered time and again by Rockwell, Mike Holmes, Alan Lindsay, myself, and others is very much like the responses of the deluded cult followers of Jim and Tammy Baker, or of Jimmy Swaggart. Not quite as hopped up, perhaps, but all in all disturbingly much the same. Those members who don't mind being fleeced, those who join the Libertarian Party for some kind of psychic therapy, those who embrace the party as a cult of losers, those who constitute what an old friend of mine once called the nation's biggest outpatient clinic, this overwhelming majority of members are welcome to the LP. They can have it. As for Lou Rockwell and myself, we're cutting out. My own talk, by the way, and oddly enough, was received with warmth and enthusiasm. Even though I tried to make clear my agreement with Lou, I suppose it was the old story of the bad cop, good cop. After Lou's figurative thwacking of the assembled gathering with a 2x4, anything else would have been received as a port in the storm. I set the current scene in historical perspective and pointed out the urgent need for profound rethinking of strategies, stances, and tactics by conservatives and libertarians. With the Cold War over, there is great opportunity for alliances with the Paleo-Conservatives. First, on a non-interventionist foreign policy on which both groups agree, and second, on social issues, on which leftists have already assumed the high moral ground, and which will be the key interventionist issues of the 90s. environmentalism and holding animals, insects, plants, rocks, and blue water higher than man. Egalitarianism and special privileges forever for accredited victims. And paternalistic efforts to outlaw everything not certifiably good for you. Drugs, alcohol, smoking, and what have you. In the question period, I was asked by an Alabama LP stalwart whether I was opposed to an effort by them and others — there were certainly glimmerings of such an attitude in the Georgia party — to organize and take back the National LP from its misleaders. I replied that I was all for it and wished such efforts well, but that I personally had been fighting these people in the LP for 17 years, and that I had had it, up to here. In the German phrase, ohne mich, without me, fellas. A fitting coda to the afternoon came in the reply by Ron Krickenberger. Supposed to talk for a minute or two, he rambled on for about 20 minutes, and his persona and his talk constituted an unwitting vindication of the Rockwell thesis. First, young Krickenberger appeared, much to the displeasure of the organizers, in jeans and other raffish garb, topped by a gold chain around his neck featuring a gold dollar sign. In addition to the expected pap about how the LP is in great shape and getting better, he noted that NatCom meetings have been harmonious since our dissident faction had left the scene, then inconsistently called upon us to stop being sore losers and rejoin the fold. In his euphoria, Krickenberger, new to the NatCom scene, should have waited a few months to make such a pronouncement. Wait, for example, till the honeymoon of the new regime is over and the money starts running out. Krickenberger did admit that Lou seemed to be right on one point. He is worried about the lack of activity on the vital ballot access front. Ha! To echo President Ronnie, he ain't seen nothing yet. But the startling point, the dramatic vindication of the Rockwellian analysis, came at the beginning of Krickenberger's talk, when he averred, very much in the spirit of a Salvation Army or Pentecostal meeting, that libertarianism had saved my life. It appears that Krickenberger is a kleptomaniac, that he used to be a junkie and a cat burglar, and the assembled Alabama bourgeois gaped in astonishment as Krickenberger detailed how he used to con people into setting themselves up for stealing their TVs and to her valuables. Then, announced Krickenberger, he read Atlas Shrugged, discovered the non-aggression axiom, and came to realize, as a result, that he was hurting others as well as himself by being a junkie thief. Hence his rise to his present eminence. Krickenberger may have the distinction of being the only person ever converted to altruism by Atlas Shrugged. How come he didn't realize before that this theft was hurting his victims? Who knows? Krickenberger himself doesn't seem to know, claiming that if he understood the precise process by which libertarianism converted him out of his life of crime, he could package it and end the crime problem in the world. All we needed were cries of "Amen, brother," and other Pentecostal demonstration, but fortunately the Alabama party was not ready for that. After contemplating this performance by one of our distinguished NatCom members and defenders of the LP faith, is it any wonder that the middle class, the working class, or indeed any sane people are repelled by the Libertarian Party? Is it any wonder that sensible members are heading for the exit? Signed, Murray N. Rothbard.